All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the 2020 annual meeting. If you have not met me before, I'm Jillian DeShazer, and in January of this year, I took over the reins as board president. Little did I know that I would soon be facing what many of us will remember as possibly the worst year ever. But as you'll hear this evening, I think for our organization, the pandemic really did have a silver lining. Now, before we dive into our very ambitious agenda that we'll try to get through within an hour, I would like to take a few moments to thank our many generous sponsors and supporters. We're very proud of the fact that Frederick County Bank has been our feature sponsor for the last few years. We'd also like to thank our We the People exhibit sponsors, and especially our presenting sponsor, Woodsboro Bank. They've been a gracious partner in so many ways, and we're deeply thankful for our continued support. Now, here's the hard part. There have been phenomenal support from our local county and state officials who've championed and supported us in a way that's beyond our ability to thank. Just very quickly, some of the ones I'd like to mention is the Maryland Heritage Area Authority, the City of Frederick County, the Carroll Creek Rotary Club, the GF Thomas Foundation, Delaplane Foundation, Carlson Foundation, and Frederick Mutual Insurance. Without these people, really, it would be difficult to have accomplished what we've accomplished this year. Now for a little bit of quick housekeeping. I know we love these online Zoom meetings. They're super exciting. There are 2 votes this evening that we need to hold according to our bylaws, but we're going to keep it simple for you. In the bottom of your screen, please take the time to identify it. There's a little chat icon. It might look a little different from the shot I'm showing you here, but it should look similar. So when we call for a vote, please, only if you wish to vote no, type no in the chat window. If you're in favor, no response is needed, and that's what we call a consensus vote. So if you're in agreement, you say nothing. I like this, it's simple, it's easy. Hopefully we've made it easy for you this evening. We do appreciate your patience as we navigate through new territory of a Zoom annual meeting. My fingers are crossed that there will be no major issues, but I'll apologize in advance for any glitches that may happen, and we'll just work through them as we need to. And so at this time, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Mike Beninsky, our board secretary, who will present the 2019 minutes. He's going to be followed by Kate Koslow, our governance committee chair, and then Chuck Mann, our finance committee chair.
Good evening, everyone. You might remember me. I'm the secretary. I'm Mike Beninsky. Hopefully you had an opportunity to look at the minutes and review them from last year. They were a little long. Sorry about that. This year's will be a little shorter, I'm sure. So what I'm looking for is consensus approval to accept the minutes, and using the chat function. If anyone has a no vote, please put it in there. If anyone has a correction, please put it in the chat. And I will wait a moment to see how that works out. And not seeing anything in the chat, I'm going to assume we have consensus approval for last year's minutes. I thank you very, very much. And now I'm going to turn it over to our governance chair, Kate Koslow.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm Kate Koslow, chair of governance, as Mike said. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to the people part of the meeting. So this is the part that reminds us how important membership is at Heritage Frederick. This is your opportunity to vote to actively participate in choosing the people who will be willing to give their time to keep the wheels turning and the community engaged in our mission. So like everything else in 2020, our voting process is different. So with no further ado, I'll flip through our pages. We have 2 items to vote on. We have the election of officers, and we have the election of new board members. We're going to hold that vote, those 2 parts in one vote. So with no further ado, first I have to tell you who is departing. I think it's a testament to the Heritage Frederick group at large that we have 4 people who have gone their entire 6 years. So they're at board expiration, so we would automatically roll off. But everybody's been there through thick and thin for all of that time. Term endings, it doesn't work out that everybody can fulfill a term. Mita, our events chair, did a fabulous job. She had fulfilled one full term. Rick Miller needed to be replaced midterm, and according to the bylaws, we need to replace an unfulfilled term with someone else within 60 days. So what we did is we elected Tom Trott. The board got together and vetted Tom, and he was elected just a month ago, so he's very new. Tom is a manager of Embrace Home Loans. He's held positions in the community, the YMCA and Brook Hill Church. He was on the board of directors. He has a love of history, as does many or most of our new recruits this year, and especially for genealogy. So he has a long history in Frederick, and we're already just getting used to his being a board member. He was not able to attend tonight. So another board member, Howard Cox, or proposed board member. Howard, about a month ago, was the speaker at one of our lectures on General James Wilkinson. So Howard is an expert, I would call him, in history, and a great lecturer. The attendance for one of his lectures was almost 80 people. So we're expanding the circle of people that we have for this important function. And Howard is a speaker on many topics, and so we're looking forward to having him aboard. Last but not least, Richard Stonebreaker is also a familiar face at Heritage Frederick. Richard is an agricultural education teacher at Frederick High School. He's got a master's in education, and he's working on a doctorate at Hood College in organizational leadership. So you might have recognized him. Richard has done everything in the garden, including mowing the lawn. So that's a duty not everybody is willing to take, and so we're very excited to have him aboard. Moving on is our slate of officers. So First, we want to thank Jillian, who is president during a very, very tough year. The buck stopped at her in a big way this year. So thankfully, Carrie DeLonte, who's a current board member, is a small business owner and has a very unique skill set, we think, to bring a new executive director on. So she'll be in charge of the search. Again, Jillian will be immediate past president for continuity. Serving again is Chuck Mann as VP Treasurer. And Secretary, this is a new member or a new face replacing Mike. And Jocelyn Stevens, you may recognize her as the person who did her master's degree on design thinking and spent about a year or so in the museum. We had a report for her from her about how people experience museums and about membership and all other kind of things. So we're happy that she's secretary, and I think she'll be instrumental in our 5-year strategic plan. So member at large is fulfilling a term again is Adrian Woody. That's sort of the jack of all trades position as part of the executive committee. And Adrian has a very, very broad skill set to bounce ideas off of, whether they're financial, whether they're organizational. She's really been a wonderful asset to have on the executive committee. So I think with no further ado, I will take a vote. But one last comment is I would be remiss if I didn't mention and thank profusely our former secretary of the board, Mike Benitsky. And I'm excited to announce that Mike has agreed to stay on the board another year to provide more continuity. So I don't know that all the board members even know that yet, but this is very good news, and it'll just show you that he just can't get enough of Heritage Frederick. So I will assume that the motion is to ratify the position for Tom Trott, who has been elected by the board, to present the new board members, Howard Cox and Richard Stonebreaker, and our slate of officers. So if I don't hear anything to the contrary, I will assume an affirmative vote. And if there are any opposed, please hit your chat bar and type in no. So if we don't see anything, then I will turn the meeting over to Chuck Mann.
Hello, and good evening. Glad to be with you this evening. As mentioned, I'm the treasurer and would like to give you a brief summary of where the organization is financially. The board over the last several years, not just the current board, but over many years, I think has done a great job of enacting their fiduciary responsibilities. And as you see here, the balance sheet continues to get stronger and stronger. Assets over that 5-year period have grown by 15%, and which is the blue line, and liabilities, which is the green line towards the bottom, has decreased by 74%, which has resulted in an increase in our net assets of 22% over that time frame. So again, my thanks and appreciation to many boards and officers for all the work that they've done in leading this organization and ensuring its financial health and financial sustainability. The statement of activities, which shows our operations, you'll notice in 2016, let me back up, revenues are the blue line, expenses are the red line for each year, and then the green line is the operating surplus or deficit. And you'll notice that in 2016, the organization had a fairly small operating deficit, but for the last 3 audited years, 2017 through 2019, the organization has been able to balance its budget. You'll notice that during that time frame, though, the organization has had to manage its expenditures and have made some reductions as needed to fit with the revenues. So as revenues decreased from 2018 to 19, there had to be an adjustment to the expenditures, which then allowed the organization still to have a small operating surplus at the end of the year. 2020 is unaudited, and this is only through October 31st. So there's still 2 months left in the fiscal year, but you can see the dramatic drop off in revenue that's taken place this year because of the pandemic. And I'll talk a little bit more of that in a second. But again, the organization has exercised fiduciary responsibilities, and in so doing have made some drastic and significant reductions in expenditures in order to live within the means. And so right now, we have currently a very small surplus. And again, the next 2 months are going to determine tremendously how we finish the year. The largest revenue component of the organization by far is fundraising. And as you can see here, the organization from 17 through 19, has been in the, $225,000 to $260,000 range of fundraising. And again, that is what supports the operations day to day. This year, because of the pandemic, we've seen a tremendous drop off in the revenue. Fundraising revenue is down to, as shows here, $156,000. But again, we still have 2 months left in the year. We look to you all for your support and continued support of the organization, and hopefully we can get that revenue up during the next 2 months and in the year strongly. But again, I think the organization is doing well financially. Balance sheet is strong. The operations are being managed appropriately to live within the budget. And I think overall, we're in good shape. So with that, I thank you for your continued support, and I will turn it over to Anita Hoffman, who will speak next. So thank you all.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name's Anita Hoffman. I'm the full-time archivist here at Heritage Frederick. You may recognize me. I worked on the Margaret Myers collection, processing that back in 2018 and 19. I started here last November part-time when my predecessor left and became the full-time archivist here in March of 2020. So with that said, I want to kind of move forward chronologically and highlight some of the behind the scenes projects we've been working here at the Library and Archives. And so I'll just start in with that. Sorry about that. So when we went into lockdown back in March, I think that was the end of March, it gave me an opportunity, despite how awful that was, to kind of refocus on some projects that had been put on the back burner for quite a while. And so I spent some time trying to identify some of those things. And to start off, we had a fund that had been made available to us to upgrade some of our electronics. So I'm happy to report that the library now has 2 brand new, much needed desktop computers for staff and public use. And we replaced the desktop here in the archivist office with a laptop, which was perfect timing because being portable, it really helped out when we were working remotely. While we were quarantined, I worked on a significant backlog of research requests. Those were probably backlogged about 6 to 8 months. So I was able to get those caught up. And while we did that, I updated the processes on that and some of the research packages that we offered. It was also during that time that I started thinking about our social media sites and what we could do to effectively reach out to the public. So I worked with Dee Dolan, who did a fabulous job of creating some flyers for me. I came up with some themed ideas for each month to promote the library and archives and our research services, and she did this phenomenal job of design and creating these flyers, which we posted out on a monthly basis on Facebook and Instagram. And so I'll give you an example of that. So like in May, for Mother's Day, we highlighted our research we can do for maternal genealogical research. In July, we focused on Revolutionary War soldiers, and in August, we focused on property research, just a few of the different types of materials we have here at the library. I'm happy to report that we doubled the amount of research requests in comparison to last year. So as summer approached, we were working back in the office more, and so I went ahead and brought in 6 summer interns to help with some archival projects. And one of them, Don Ellis, was instrumental in working on our social media presence. So he continued on with that and had some great ideas. So if you followed us throughout the summer, you probably saw a few of his postings at least. And we were really happy about that. It really brought a lot more attention and kept us involved in the community. Another one of the projects I had the interns work on, I had started back in the spring during shutdown, was our session books. So up until this point, our session books were all done by hand, handwritten. So when we receive an item in, they would be handwritten into a logbook with the information about the item as well as the donor information. The limitation to that is that if we look for something in the catalog and we can't find it and we have to turn to the accession books, we would literally have to turn page by page looking for it. And so what I started doing is transcribing those accession books into spreadsheets. And that, like I said, that's a continuing project because there are several large books. And so by putting these into the spreadsheets, we can now keyword search them, and it makes it a little easier to find. In addition to that, we're also having each item checked against the catalog as well as visually on the shelf or the location it's supposed to be. And we're identifying any misinformation or things that need to be corrected. All this is moving forward to a plan for 2021, where I hope to bring in some new software and a new catalog with more accurate information. And so what this new program will do, not only give us a more accurate catalog, it will mainstream all our processes. And so it will give us an opportunity to have more a more accurate deaccession and accessioning process, as well as track our research requests and our deed of gifts, which will save us time and money in the end. So I'm looking forward to that, and I think I might have lost you. Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. So I'm looking forward to that in 2021 and moving forward with the new software. So moving ahead in September, we were awarded a $50,000 IMLS grant for the Davis photo project. We were able to start phase 1 in September. We brought on 2 archival assistants who are currently working doing the inventory on this collection. So to give you a little bit of a background on this collection, in 2009, we received from the Davis studio a gift of a variously sized photographs and negatives from 1941 to 2009. Our most recent assessment identified over 48,000 sets of photos and negatives, which I kind of feel was a little on the conservative side because I feel that it's a much larger collection than that and is currently the largest collection that we now own. So phase 1 of the project is focused on inventory. What we need to do is to get everything inventoried and identify parts of the collection that need immediate attention. A lot of the negatives are starting to deteriorate, especially some of the older ones. So we need to get those in archival envelopes and boxes and get them stabilized. So by doing the inventory, we can identify what is needed first. The other part of that is that we can identify some historically significant parts of the collection. We do know there's a photo in there of Senator John F. Kennedy when he campaigned here for the presidency in 1960. So we're excited to find some other treasures in this collection. Moving on, earlier this fall, I was contacted by a conservator at Harvard University who flagged my attention to a set of Frederick County records. They were up for sale by a rare book dealer in Massachusetts. And through this connection and with the permission of our state archivist, we were able to purchase 3 ledgers of William M. Beale, Jr., who was the sheriff of Frederick County from 1819 to 1822. So these sheriff records are significant to our history, not only because they document a period of time where records are few survive, but also because they contain records that involve Roger Brooktani, Francis Scott Key, and hundreds of slave records, to include 3 freedom cases. I was in frequent contact with our state archivist, Tim Baker, throughout the whole process. And he was able to promise us a conservator to work on the ledgers and to also digitize them. So we will be taking them to the state archives soon for that. And once we receive them back, a volunteer, David Wallace, has graciously offered to transcribe them. So we're very excited about this purchase. And I believe Shuan will have a photo for you later. Finally, our fall interns worked tirelessly organizing, researching, and pricing our many duplicate books for our book sale that we held on November 14th. So unfortunately, we didn't get the turnout that we had hoped for. The restrictions went into place about 2 days prior, so I feel like that put a damper on it. But we still sold just short of $1,100, which will be added to our collections fund. So if you missed our sale and you still want to add to your library, we will resale on December 19th and 20th, so mark your calendars. And if you have any last minute Christmas shopping to do, please stop by because there's still plenty of Frederick County history and genealogy titles available. With that, I will hand it over to Shuan.
Thank you, Anita, and great job. A lot of wonderful information in just a short period of time. Let me pull up my slides as well. So I have the privilege of obviously serving on the board, but also as chair of the collections committee. And at last year's annual meeting, we did something new and actually was able in person, of course, to be able to share some of the items of our collection. And so I'll share a few items that I wanted to just kind of highlight with everyone in just a few minutes. Before I do, of course, I would be remiss without talking about, with the museum being closed and the pandemic in our midst, we were able to switch or pivot our programming to virtually. And we've had 5 wonderful presentations thus far, including, as Kate mentioned, one by our new board member now that he's official, Howard Cox. And these have been very well received. We've had upwards of almost just shy of 100 people attend one or two of those programs. So we're looking forward to continuing that. In fact, there is an upcoming program on December 8th. You're hearing about it because it was literally just confirmed today. So registration information will be going out to everyone shortly. But if you haven't seen this wonderful book, Historical Bridges of Frederick County, Dr. John Vittorello is going to be speaking about his new book, and some wonderful photography and images, all taken primarily taken by him. And it also allows us to learn maybe of some structures that we go by or cross over every day. And so that will be a great, fascinating program, I'm sure. Also virtually happening virtually this year is an annual event hosted by Visit Frederick and the Historic Sites Consortium called Museums by Candlelight. Typically it does take place the second Saturday of December. And this year it will be virtually, but it'll be a longer period, December 1st through 13th. Heritage Frederick will be participating. And one of the way that we're primarily participating is in 2021. We will be, as soon as the museum is open, we will have a new exhibit called We the People. And so, which kind of brings in all the residents from past up to present that have called Frederick home, if you will. And one of the things that we're going to do is tie those two components together with our Museums by Candlelight by featuring holiday traditions in Frederick as well as around the world. So we're very fortunate to partner with some of our some individuals and residents that are a part of some of our cultural organizations in Frederick County. So stay tuned for that once Visit Frederick starts sharing the link and the information. So, you know, one of the things that I always like to talk about is, you know, we have a great collection in Frederick County and at the museum. And it's really in part because of you, our members. I mean, we get items that help us interpret Frederick County history on an ongoing basis. And so I would be remiss, of course, without thanking you. I love this part of the program because it's almost like a show and tell. And it allows me to say and remind folks that, you know, history is not boring. It's not old. It's not about objects and timelines. You know, in the word history is story, and Heritage Frederick is about stories, and history is about stories, and Heritage Frederick is the storyteller. So I wanted to just highlight some of our objects in the collection. And I'll start with this baseball, which was from opening ceremony of the East Frederick Little League in 1958. It's signed by a number of individuals, including at the time that the mayor of the city of Frederick, John Durr. The league was founded by Roy Main and others, and they played on a ball field on Maryland Avenue, which is right across from the fairgrounds. In 1970, they moved to West 7th Street, but kept that name. So we have a little bit of echo. Maybe one of the panelists is still not muted. I just want to mention that. Next is this cake caddy. It's a chrome caddy, cake caddy produced by Frederick's Ever Ready Company. It's part of their chrome-plated kitchenware series, which was introduced in the 1930s, one of many that they produced. Of course, Ever Ready Company was started originally by Harry and Robert Leberts in 1920 on East Street. And then in World War II, they pivoted their production to everything from rocket parts, grenades, and more to help serve our country's wartime needs. This is an English grammar textbook. It's a compact textbook, almost something that you could fit right into your pocket. It's by Nathaniel Vernon. printed by Schley and Haller in 1847. Some of this information you may be able to make out on the cover. Nathaniel Vernon was a resident teacher at the Frederick County Academy, which was located at the time at Council and Record Streets. He was primarily a professor of mathematics, but obviously, as you can tell, had a firm grasp of the English language, apparently, as well, to be able to produce this fine book. Many of us may remember the old Peter Pan Inn. Each room, when you walked in, had an old world theme. People could dine at, for example, sewing tables with little footstools. There were peacocks roaming, fountains, and statues. And the Peter Pan Inn was established in 1926 by Grace Baumgartner. This simple menu with things like fried chicken, ham steak, corn fritters, and cream peas, for example. Her son, Richard, was a professional musician, opened a nightclub there. And then when he passed away in 1986, the restaurant shortly followed about 10 years later. Or 1970, he passed away in 1976. The restaurant closed in 1986, about 10 years later. Here's this violin. And I just want to, during the Civil War, there was a lot of curiosity, and it brought civilians often out to the battlefields. We hear stories about people even going to witness the battles and as entertainment. But often folks sought souvenirs because they thought it was marking something of historical significance. And that's what Elias Grove did. He was a farmer that lived outside the Frederick, and he happened upon two violins on the Monocacy battlefield. Not sure if this one fell off a supply wagon or some other reason, and we're not sure if it belonged to a Union or Confederate soldier, but it is we have both in our collection. This pocket watch has two unique connections to Frederick. First, it was owned by Middletown native Joseph Van Sweringen, a captain in the U.S. Army, who was killed in 1837 during Florida Seminole Wars. The paper inside this case reads John Fessler, clock and watchmaker, Patrick Street, Fredericktown, Maryland. And so the other connection, of course, was we all know about Fessler clocks, and particularly the grandfather clocks when he operated as a clock and watch maker from 1785 to roughly 1820. So this watch was either purchased from Fessler, or at least he at least repaired it. So there's because of the paper that was on the inside. And his initials are on it twice for even cleaning it. So he must have maintained this watch a couple of times as well. I'm a big fan of the Hamilton musical, so I loved and was surprised to learn of the fact that we have a pair of dueling pistols in our collection. This pair belonged to Roger Nelson of Point of Rocks. He enlisted in the Continental Army in 1780 as a lieutenant in the Maryland line, wounded in battle, but survived. And then after the war, he studied law and practiced here in Frederick. Nelson would also be elected to the State House of Delegates, to Congress, as well as as a judge on the circuit court. He passed away in 1815. And then you'll get a little bit of a sneak preview of our December, each issue of Frederick Magazine highlights an item from our collection, and I happen to be the opportunity to write this piece, so this is what I wrote about. So you'll see this in Frederick Magazine if you get it in just a few weeks. But it's War Ration Book number 3, and we actually have a set of 6 of these that were from the Koblenz family, a well-known name in Middletown. This particular one was owned by Calvin Koblenz, 21 at the time, in 1943, and he was a student at JHU, Johns Hopkins. Of course, during World War II, we, as a country, we rationed everything from rubber and metal to fabric and food. So we all did our part in some way, one way or the other. But this one happened to have 4 sheets of stamps, 1 sheet with cannon stamps, 1 with tanks, 1 with ships, and 1 with airplanes. And then lastly, I just wanted to highlight what Anita was talking about. With the recent acquisition, and of course we'll go through a conservation period, but it's through the support of Anita and our collections committee that we were able to come through and acquire such a wonderful historical item. And I want to thank Anita, I want to thank Katie and the entire staff, the collections committee and board for their support of our ongoing ability to help tell stories here in Frederick County. With that, further ado, I will turn it back over to our president, Jillian.
Thank you, Shuan. That is a pretty tough act to follow as I attempt to share my screen. But I promise you that hopefully the rest of this will be interesting. And if you're worried about time, I have been known to be a bit of a speed talker, so you are in for a treat because you won't take too long. I promise I'll try to speak a little slower. Well, typically, this would be part of the meeting that we usually enjoy the most, and I hope you'll still enjoy it. It's where we tell you, our members, what we've been doing since we last met in November of 2019. And as you may have noticed, this year our format's a little different from the norm. Out of the gate, you get me instead of the vastly more knowledgeable Mary. Normally, the executive director gives the annual report, but as you all know, Mary has left us for a much more glamorous life of retirement. I'm sure many of us are very envious of that. It's a difficult job to be an executive director of a nonprofit. The challenges are never ending. And the hats you wear change from day to day. Oh, the fun of technology.
Kate, can you unmute? Can you mute?
We told you there'd be a few glitches, so this is good. It wouldn't be a presentation in Zoom if we didn't have a few glitches. So as I was saying, it is a difficult job to be an executive director of a nonprofit. The challenges are never ending. You know, the hats you wear from day to day change. You know, you go from managing a building to writing articles, to writing grants, to managing staff, to serving on committees. So Mary was certainly never at a loss for work. During her time as executive director with us, she worked very diligently to renew our certification with the American Alliance of Museums. Some of you may have remembered that. It was a laborious process and it took a long time to achieve. And we're one of only 35 museums in the United States to have it. And that's just one of the hats that Mary wore. It would take more time than we have this evening to go through all she's done, but I would encourage anyone interested to review our past annual meeting minutes to get a good picture of Heritage Frederick over the years. Due to COVID, of course, we couldn't hold any sort of function at the museum. Many of you already reached out to Mary, and I know she truly appreciated that. What we were able to do was honor her with a brick in the Heritage Garden walkway. So when that is ready, we encourage you, and of course, when it's safely to do so, to visit our garden and check it out. And speaking of checking out our garden and checking out the museum, oh, the plans we had, of course. In spring of 2020, we'd scheduled the Claire McCardle pop-up exhibit, the spring members meeting, the inaugural brick dedication, and of course, our educational program was due to begin. Summer would have brought out our themed walking tours, participation in the Frederick Festival of the Arts. We would have launched the Outtime Storytime Garden, and of course, we would have our traditional ice cream social, one of the most fun things that we do. Then we would gently slip into fall with our very first apple butter boil, our second bricks dedication, and an opening reception in the museum to launch We the People. Then into winter, it would bring our Festival of the Trees, the popular fundraiser that always ensured our museum was fantastically decorated for Museums by Candlelight. Well, with all these plans, we truly thought our biggest challenge was how to staffer them by re-envisioning the roles and responsibilities after 3 of our employees, moved on for various reasons. I think we can all guess what came along to make this the very least of our concerns, and suddenly our doors, like many others, were closed. Our fundraising events were no longer viable, and the future of Heritage Frederick, if for a small time, seemed a little uncertain. That is a lot to happen to a small organization with a small staff and a small budget. And yet, good things are happening. I'm very happy to tell you good things are happening. As in all things in life, with challenges come opportunities. And with our doors closed, we were suddenly gifted the physical space and time to pursue many of the initiatives we'd planned for, but never been able to enact. And you heard about some of them from Anita already. Of the good things, let's first talk about the staff. They are indeed small in number, but very, very mighty. Before the pandemic hit, Mary was able to hire the key positions, resulting in a creative team who are working very hard every single day. And, I'll briefly introduce them. I won't take too long, but I think it's incredibly important to talk about them. First, you have already met the lovely Anita Hoffman, archivist and researcher extraordinaire. You heard her talk about the Research Center earlier, and you also heard her talk about she worked on our Margaret Myers collection, which was an incredible labor of love. We also have Katie Dragon now. She is our registrar who ensures that our collections are cataloged and maintained. Katie has quite the Frederick pedigree and actually graduated with a Master's in Museum Studies with a focus on collections care and exhibit development, which is awesome, from Cooperstown, and that's the same alma mater as Mary. This incredible staff has made significant contributions to increasing our engagement with the community, as well as just keeping the organization running. You already heard Anita talk about the Davis Photography Project, but she also kind of alluded to, but did not toot her horn enough about single-handedly reimagining the Research Center. She increased the request turnaround time, and she talked a little bit, you can see on the screen, some of these monthly themes, all about family and property research, and did the advertising herself. Anita and her interns executed a record number of research requests and continued to work hard to come up with new ideas, and their turnaround was just amazing. Katie came in ready to attack the backlog of donations and gifts that are currently being processed now. There is a huge pile. She has taken on reorganization of the artifact storage, filling in our database gaps, and making sure that everything is accounted for, photographed, and properly researched. This is all much needed work. And let's not forget our volunteers and interns who, working under the supervision of Anita and Katie, are also constantly working to support Heritage Frederick. And along with them, our committees continue to work to keep our initiatives moving forward. So just a few things. The Facilities Committee has continued to work tirelessly identifying and coordinating maintenance work. Mary had worked very hard on grants and bond bills that enabled us to focus on improving our building and maintaining its historical relevance. We can even report that the HVAC is finished at the Preservation Center. The board members will all clap at that. 4 new units were installed, and now our artifacts are very comfy and cozy. It may not sound like sexy stuff, but it's very important stuff. Katie continues to work with the collection committees to make sure our collections fit our mission. They're actively searching out new artifacts, just like Shuan said, and deaccessioning ones that really are no longer relevant to what our mission is going for. The Garden Guild kept the grounds looking great during COVID, and of course they followed social distancing guidelines while doing so. The marketing committee worked with staff and several talented interns to enhance our social media presence. We've been sending out emails to our members apprising you of what's going on. I'm hoping you're getting them. And developing fun new campaigns. And speaking of staff and committees working together to keep things going, and I think it's about time we address a topic I'm sure everyone is very curious about. With the pandemic and other challenges, it does seem like this project has taken 1 step forward, 2 steps back. But please be assured that we, the people, the story of Frederick County, has been continually moving forward, if maybe a little slower than we'd like. Exhibit Committee Chair Nancy Bodner has graciously taken over as point person, and Mary had handed off the keys to the kingdom to that, and has been working with Katie and many others to keep the ball rolling. And yes, there have been delays, and no, we'll not be launching a virtual tour on December 1st as initially advertised, but we see the light at the end of the tunnel, and we're very confident that we'll be ready in January of 2021. We're almost at the finish line. And this brings me to the #1 struggle, in my opinion, of our 2020 operations, which was, and I think Anita alluded to it a little bit, embracing modern technology. As you might imagine, Heritage Frederick is not known for its technological savvy, modern software, or high-end equipment. For us, the pandemic turned out to be less of a knock us on our butt and really more of a kick us in the butt to get us going. We had long known that we needed to revamp our research center. We've known that we needed to increase our online presence and known we needed to upgrade our technology. So as other organizations and businesses were pivoting, we were more executing a 3-point turn. And I love the fact that Shuan earlier said that we pivoted, because the optimism of that was great. We were a little slower. It was a 3-point turn. But that 3-point turn has led us to some great strides in reimagining what we can do with our programs and services. We started really simply, as simple as we could, by using existing materials that we had and making them online resources that could be posted on our website. You might have seen the Civil War Spy, Heritage Heroes, and the Kids Scavenger Hunt. Then shortly after, we added the Women's History Tour and a few other fun resources. Please visit us at our website to access the materials, and I will have the link later, but it's always frederickhistory.org. So that was our simple start. About this same time everything was happening, Nancy had taken on the daunting task of organizing our bookstore and just finished her efforts when our doors closed. She then had to quickly reimagine everything for a contactless experience, resulting in our brand new online bookery and gifts. It officially launched in June of this year, and since has sold over 45 items, bringing in revenue we would not otherwise have had. So far, in case you wanted to know, the most popular book is Inside Camp David. The second most popular, The Diary of Jacob Engelbrecht, and the third, The History of Frederick County. We've also recently added new gift inventory for the holidays, including mugs and note cards with art by local artist Ellen Byrne, and a Christmas ornament of our building. Nancy is adding new books all the time about local history by local authors. And guess what? Curbside pickup's available too. So please check it out at frederickhistory.org, and you just click on the shop button at the top. Well, at this meeting last year, the Garden Committee announced the Commemorative Bricks program, and they began taking orders. That foray into online purchases had many, many hiccups, but oh my, they persevered. And the result is that the first wave of purchasers have had their bricks installed. And while we couldn't hold an event, the Garden Committee was genius in sending out individual pictures of the bricks with a thank you card to everyone. So I hope you got yours. It's beautiful. The great news is that the phase 2 is underway just in time for the holiday season. So you may purchase your bricks online at a better experience than what it was before. Again, at frederickhistory.org. At the top, there is under the programs, a Commemorative Brick, and you can find it there. Like the bookstore and the Bricks Initiative, work had begun on a new Storytime garden for children located in the Medicinal Herb Garden out back behind the museum. The area was lovingly tended, and it was beautifully set up with a small library box full of children's books. But once again, we were unable to make use of it before gatherings were restricted due to COVID. And once again, our amazing Garden Committee put their heads together, and with the help of our Hood intern, Stephanie Nassau, created Storytime videos that are now available on our YouTube channel for use by families and teachers. So this was an amazing accomplishment, and definitely something that we can use in the future. And of course, you already heard from Shuan regarding our amazing online lecture series called Heritage Frederick at Home. It's been very popular, and this empowered us to actually create our YouTube channel that now we can share all of our presentations and all of our online video materials. It's something that we're going to continue to do, even when we can go back to holding in-person gatherings. And from my heart, I cannot thank Shuan enough for his efforts on this program. It would not have happened without him. So the good and the bad summation. Really what's truly great about this organization is how our volunteers, staff, and board have taken each potential setback as an opportunity to move Heritage Frederick forward in a very positive way. The initial loss of staff allowed us to avoid the downsizing and layoffs of other organizations. Closure of the building allowed us time to start tackling a punch list of issues from, building maintenance to getting caught up on documenting the collection. And cancellations of our events allowed us to focus our efforts a little more digitally. You saw some of the balance sheets that Chuck showed you. Because we didn't rehire for certain positions when we lost our 3 staff, we were able to save a little bit of money on payroll, which helped us financially as our fundraising efforts came to a halt. And of course, by not having events, we did not incur the cost associated with planning and executing events. So I call this a slightly melancholy win. It's maybe not the win we wanted, but it's still a win nonetheless. So now that we're done with the State of Frederick, I'd like to close. I told you I'd be short, right? I'd like to close by sharing our thoughts on the future of the organization and what 2021 will bring. And I have to say, personally, I think our future looks exciting and fresh. Last year, you heard from board member Jocelyn Stevens, who's also our new board secretary, about the results of her extensive research on how the public experiences museums for her design thinking masters. And she really looked at ours in particular. This year, we were part of the Chamber of Commerce Leaders on Loan program. And this spring, they gave us a series of professional recommendations on building up our membership base and online engagement. That data, in combination with the lessons we've learned from our initial foray into the digital content, has provided us with a wealth of concrete information we can use to build our post-COVID vision. We have so many exciting ideas, and the timing literally could not be better. We have a committee working on reevaluating the usage of our space and how we can reimagine the museum to serve both our collection and our community. Good times to have the doors open, and maybe good times to have the doors shut so that we can do a lot of things we've been doing now. And of course, our five-year strategic plan, which we called Vision 2020, is ending. It ends this year. And it's time to develop the new one to carry us through the next 5 years. And we, the board, are very excited about this. Why? We'll have a new executive director just in time for this important process. And we are confident our search committee will find just the right person to guide us into the future. So indeed, while 2020 has been, challenges and achievements, I think that 2021 is going to be a great. All right, so really now is the part where we look to you. How can you help? There are so many in the room today or online today that remember the challenges that were brought to the membership in 2027, just saying 2017. I wish it was 2027. We've gone light years past that. We've really, really made great strides since that time. And it's thanks to our members and our donors. And we continue to need your support in this difficult time. You can help in so many ways. And of course, I'll say you can donate online or in the annual fund. You could join Heritage Circles. You could buy a brick. I know Adrian would love that. Or you could buy a book. I know Nancy would love that. Or you could attend our book sale. I know that Anita would love that. You could also volunteer. We need people. We need people to come and help with things. You can join a committee. We always need committees. And of course, we have Giving Tuesday coming up. And that is a fantastic time for you to donate to the organization. And I'd just like to say, we always, every organization, every nonprofit, asks for money. But we truly are grateful for you, the donors, and you, the members, because that's literally why we're still here. So that's all I have for you. Thank you so much for your time. It's really difficult to sit through Zoom meetings. I know it's difficult for me to talk out to faces I can't see because I love the in-person annual meetings where we can engage one-on-one. But the fact that you are here and that you showed up just shows how much you care about Heritage Frederick. We appreciate that so much. please reach out to us with any questions. I know that Mike has been looking, or Sean has been looking at the chat. And if we haven't answered them, we hope to answer them in another method. But at any time, reach out to us with any questions. And we hope to see you safe, healthy, and in person in the new year. So with that, I'll bid you all good night. And thank you again.